Have you ever wondered why some pear trees become strong, healthy, and loaded with delicious fruit, while others struggle for years without producing much at all? The answer often has very little to do with luck. In most cases, success begins on the very first day, the day you plant the tree. A pear tree can reward you with sweet, juicy harvests for decades, but only if its roots get the right start. A few simple mistakes during planting can slow growth, increase the risk of disease, or even shorten the tree's lifespan. The good news is that planting a pear tree correctly isn't difficult. Once you understand a few proven techniques, you'll give your tree everything it needs to thrive. In this video, you'll learn how to choose the best planting location, select a healthy young tree, prepare the soil properly, and avoid the common mistakes that prevent pear trees from reaching their full potential. Let's begin with one of the most important decisions you'll make: choosing the right location. Pear trees love sunlight. They need at least 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight every day to produce strong branches, healthy leaves, and abundant fruit. More sunlight generally means sweeter pears and better harvests. Avoid planting your tree in a low area where cold air settles during spring. Frost pockets can damage blossoms before fruit has a chance to develop. A slightly elevated location with good air circulation is usually a much better choice. Good drainage is equally important. Pear trees dislike standing water around their roots. If water remains in the planting area for more than a day after heavy rain, consider another location or create a raised planting bed. The soil should be loose, fertile, and well drained. Heavy clay soil can hold too much moisture, while extremely sandy soil may dry out too quickly. Fortunately, both can be improved with organic matter before planting. Now let's talk about selecting the right tree. A healthy nursery-grown sapling is one of the best investments you can make. Look for a straight trunk with smooth bark and several well-developed branches. Avoid trees with cracked bark, broken limbs, or signs of disease. The root system deserves special attention. If you're buying a bare-root tree, the roots should be moist, flexible, and evenly distributed. Dry, brittle roots may never recover fully. Container-grown trees should have healthy green leaves during the growing season and roots that are firm but not tightly circling the container. Roots wrapped around themselves repeatedly may continue growing that way after planting, limiting the tree's future development. Before bringing your tree home, make sure you've chosen a suitable variety for your climate. Some pear varieties perform better in colder regions, while others thrive in warmer areas. Another important point is pollination. Many pear varieties produce much better harvests when another compatible variety grows nearby. Cross-pollination increases fruit production significantly. If you only have room for one tree, choose a self-fertile variety if possible, although even those often benefit from a nearby pollinator. Timing also matters. In regions with cold winters, early spring is usually the ideal planting time, just before the tree begins active growth. In milder climates, autumn planting often works exceptionally well, because the roots have several months to establish before summer heat arrives. Once you've selected the perfect location and the right tree, it's time to prepare the planting hole. Many gardeners assume deeper is always better, but that's one of the most common mistakes. Instead of digging a very deep hole, focus on making it wide. The hole should generally be 2 to 3 times wider than the root system but only as deep as the roots themselves. Wide holes allow new roots to spread easily into loosened soil. If the hole is dug too deep, the tree may settle over time, leaving the trunk below soil level. This can encourage rot, reduce oxygen around the roots, and weaken the tree for years. As you dig, separate the topsoil from the lower layers if possible. The richer topsoil will be used first when refilling around the roots. Before placing the tree into the hole, loosen the surrounding soil with a shovel or garden fork. This simple step helps young roots expand beyond the original planting area much more quickly. Now inspect the roots carefully. Trim away any broken, damaged, or dead roots using clean pruning shears. Healthy roots should be left as intact as possible. For bare root trees, soaking the roots in clean water for 1 to 3 hours before planting helps restore moisture and reduces transplant stress. Avoid soaking them for much longer, as extended periods underwater can deprive roots of oxygen. If you're planting a container-grown tree, gently remove it from the pot and inspect the root ball. If you notice tightly circling roots, carefully loosen them with your fingers or make a few shallow vertical cuts through the outer root layer. This encourages the roots to grow outward, instead of continuing to circle. One final detail is often overlooked, yet it makes an enormous difference. Find the root flare, the point where the trunk begins to widen into the root system. This area should remain just above the finished soil level after planting. Burying the root flare too deeply is one of the leading causes of slow growth and declining tree health. Taking a few extra minutes during preparation may not seem exciting, but these small steps create the foundation for a pear tree that can stay healthy and productive for decades. Now that your planting hole is ready and your tree has been properly prepared, it's time for the most important step, placing the tree into its new home. This is the moment that will determine how well your pear tree establishes itself during the first few years. Fortunately, if you follow a few simple principles, you'll give it the strongest possible start. Begin by placing the tree in the center of the planting hole. Before adding any soil, step back and look at the tree from several angles. It should stand perfectly upright. A tree planted at an angle may develop uneven growth that becomes more difficult to correct as it matures. Check the planting depth one more time. The root flare, that slight widening where the trunk meets the roots, should remain slightly above the surrounding soil after planting. Remember that freshly filled soil naturally settles over time. Next, begin filling the hole with the soil you removed earlier. Avoid packing large amounts of compost, fertilizer, or rich potting mix directly into the planting hole. While this may seem beneficial, it often encourages roots to stay within the loose amended soil instead of spreading outward into the surrounding ground. Using mostly native soil encourages the roots to establish themselves naturally and develop a stronger, wider root system. As you refill the hole, gently shake the trunk every few inches of soil. This helps eliminate air pockets that could leave roots exposed and reduce moisture contact. Lightly press the soil with your hands or feet as you go, but avoid compacting it too firmly. Pear tree roots need oxygen just as much as they need water. Once the hole is completely filled, build a shallow watering basin around the tree. A circular ridge of soil a few inches high helps keep water where it's needed instead of allowing it to run away. Now comes one of the most critical steps, watering. Many people assume a newly planted tree only needs a quick sprinkle from the hose. In reality, it needs a deep soaking. Water slowly until the entire root zone is thoroughly moistened. Depending on your soil type and tree size, this usually requires several gallons of water. The goal isn't simply to wet the surface. You want moisture to penetrate deeply, encouraging the roots to grow downward rather than staying near the top of the soil. After the first watering, allow the water to soak in completely. If the soil settles noticeably, add a little more soil to maintain the proper planting level. Now it's time to mulch. Mulch is one of the easiest ways to improve a young tree's chances of success. Apply a layer of organic mulch about 2 to 4 inches thick around the tree. Wood chips, shredded bark, composted leaves, or straw all work well. Mulch helps conserve moisture, suppress weeds, regulate soil temperature, and gradually improve soil quality as it decomposes. However, there's one mistake that many gardeners make every year. Never pile mulch directly against the trunk. This creates what's often called a mulch volcano. Constant moisture around the bark encourages rot, fungal diseases, insect damage, and even rodent activity during winter. Instead, leave several inches of open space around the trunk so the bark remains dry and well ventilated. If your planting location is exposed to strong winds, staking may be helpful. Use 1 or 2 sturdy stakes placed outside the root ball, then attach the trunk with soft, flexible tree ties. The ties should support the tree while still allowing slight movement. Gentle movement encourages the trunk to develop greater strength. Avoid tying the tree too tightly. If the trunk cannot move at all, it may actually become weaker. Over time, in many sheltered gardens, staking isn't necessary, especially if the young tree has a healthy root system. Now let's discuss watering during the first growing season. Newly planted pear trees cannot tolerate long dry periods because their roots haven't spread far into the surrounding soil. During the first several weeks, check soil moisture regularly. Insert your finger a few inches into the soil. If it feels dry at that depth, it's time to water. Again, deep, infrequent watering is much better than shallow daily watering. Frequent light watering encourages roots to remain near the surface, making the tree more vulnerable to drought and heat stress later. Weather plays an important role. During cool, rainy periods, your tree may need very little supplemental watering. During hot, dry weather, however, weekly deep watering may be necessary, especially during the first summer. Now let's look at several planting mistakes that can reduce future harvests. The first is planting too deeply. Even healthy trees may struggle for years if the root flare is buried beneath the soil. The second mistake is overwatering. Pear trees appreciate moisture, but constantly saturated soil deprives roots of oxygen and greatly increases the risk of root diseases. The third mistake is adding excessive fertilizer immediately after planting. Fresh roots are delicate. High concentrations of fertilizer can burn them and encourage weak, overly rapid top growth before the roots are fully established. It's usually better to let the tree focus on root development during its first season. Another common mistake is allowing grass to grow right up to the trunk. Grass competes aggressively for water and nutrients. Keeping a weed-free circle around the tree for the first few years significantly improves growth. Finally, many gardeners become discouraged if their young pear tree doesn't produce fruit immediately. Patience is essential. Most pear trees spend their first years developing a strong root system and healthy branch structure before producing consistent harvests. That early investment in growth eventually pays off with larger crops, healthier branches, and a much longer-lived tree. Congratulations! Your pear tree is now planted correctly, but the work doesn't end there. The first few years are when your tree develops the strong foundation that will support decades of healthy growth and productive harvests. A little care during this period can make an enormous difference later on. One of the most important priorities is encouraging the tree to establish a deep and healthy root system. During the first growing season, continue checking soil moisture regularly. Young pear trees are far less tolerant of drought than mature ones. Water deeply whenever the soil several inches below the surface becomes dry, but avoid watering simply because the top layer looks dusty. Deep watering trains the roots to grow downward, making the tree more resilient during future dry spells. As the tree becomes established, watering can gradually become less frequent. Mature pear trees often require little supplemental watering except during extended periods of drought. Another key part of early care is pruning. Many first-time gardeners are afraid to prune, worried they'll damage the tree. In reality, thoughtful pruning helps create a stronger structure and improves future fruit production. During the first year, remove only broken, damaged, or crossing branches. Avoid heavy pruning immediately after planting, as the tree needs as many healthy leaves as possible to produce energy for root growth. As the tree grows, begin shaping it into an open, well-balanced form. Good spacing between branches allows sunlight and fresh air to reach every part of the canopy. Better air circulation helps reduce disease while improving fruit quality. Always use clean, sharp pruning tools. Smooth cuts heal faster and reduce the chance of infection. Fertilizing is another area where moderation is important. If your soil is reasonably fertile, many newly planted pear trees need little or no fertilizer. During their first growing season, applying large amounts of nitrogen too early often produces vigorous leafy growth at the expense of root development. Beginning in the second year, if growth appears slow or your soil is naturally poor, a balanced fertilizer applied according to the manufacturer's recommendations can support healthy development. Organic compost spread around the root zone each spring is also an excellent way to improve soil gradually while feeding beneficial microorganisms. Keep renewing the mulch layer every year. Organic mulch slowly decomposes, improving soil structure and helping retain moisture. Maintain a layer about 2 to 4 inches thick, but always leave a small gap around the trunk so the bark remains dry. Now let's discuss weed control. Weeds may seem harmless, but they compete directly with young trees for water and nutrients. Keep a weed-free circle extending at least several feet around the trunk whenever possible. This simple practice allows your pear tree to use its energy for growth instead of competing with surrounding vegetation. Protecting the trunk is equally important. In many areas, rabbits, mice, and deer can seriously damage young trees by chewing the bark, especially during winter. A simple tree guard or protective mesh around the lower trunk can prevent injuries that might otherwise weaken or even kill the tree. Sunscald can also affect young trees in regions with cold winters. Temperature swings between sunny days and freezing nights sometimes damage the bark. White tree guards or protective trunk wraps can reduce this risk where necessary. As your tree grows, begin watching for signs of pests or disease. Healthy trees are naturally more resistant, but regular inspection helps you catch problems before they become serious. Look for unusual leaf spots, blackened shoots, damaged fruit, or insect activity. Remove diseased branches promptly and clean up fallen leaves and fruit from beneath the tree. Good sanitation helps interrupt the life cycles of many common pests and diseases. One of the best long-term strategies is encouraging beneficial insects. Ladybugs, lacewings, hoverflies, and many native pollinators help create a balanced garden ecosystem. Planting flowering plants nearby provides food and shelter for these valuable helpers throughout the growing season. If your pear tree begins producing blossoms after a few years, don't be disappointed if the first crop is small. Young trees naturally focus much of their energy on growth. As the branches mature and the root system expands, harvests usually increase significantly. Once your tree starts bearing regularly, thinning excessive fruit can improve both fruit size and branch health. If too many pears develop on a single branch, removing some of the smallest fruits allows the remaining pears to grow larger while reducing the risk of broken limbs. Remember that gardening is a long-term investment. Unlike annual vegetables, a pear tree rewards patience. Every season strengthens its roots, thickens its trunk, and prepares it for larger harvests in the years ahead. Many well-cared-for pear trees continue producing delicious fruit for several decades. The effort you invest during planting and those first few years often determines how successful the tree will be throughout its entire life. By choosing a sunny location, preparing the soil carefully, planting at the correct depth, watering wisely, applying mulch properly, pruning with purpose, and maintaining consistent care, you've given your pear tree the very best possible start. Years from now, when its branches are filled with beautiful blossoms in spring and heavy with ripe, flavorful pears in late summer or autumn, you'll know that those careful first steps were worth every minute. Thank you for watching. If you found these planting tips helpful, be sure to subscribe for more practical gardening advice, fruit tree care guides, and proven techniques that help you grow healthier plants and enjoy bigger harvests year after year. Happy gardening, and may your pear tree thrive for many seasons to come.